biggest failing that I continuously see in the natural health movement is the inability for people to stick to cold hard logic, rigorous scientific facts, and the removal of one's personal emotional investment in a stance or an idea. Hello Kindred Longevity Lifestyle Designers, this is Gavin here with secretsoflongevity.com. On my channel, for as long as I can remember, there's always been people who disagree with me, and that's totally valid. But one thing that I've increased my ability to do over time, and also increased my understanding of, is how to approach criticism and opposing views in a very logical manner, and getting myself personally out of the debate as much as possible. And when I think about it, it actually goes even further back than discussions on health when I created my YouTube channel 3+ years ago. It actually goes back to when I first started going online and talking to people, whether it was in forums. I remember as almost a preteen, way back when the internet was dial-up and really primitive, I'd often go into like Christian forums and debate with people. So it's always just been a part of me that I was drawn to doing. And back then I was terrible. It was all rhetoric and attacks and horribleness. But through this vast experience I've had of doing this, I've refined it for a long time. And what I see more commonly than anything is a lot of irrationality that people bring to the table when they want to discuss something. And I have nothing wrong with someone having an opposing view, having a constructive criticism, etc. for me on my channel. But there's very few people that can rigorously adhere to that and stick to having a stance that's not full of an emotional investment, full of irrationality, full of points that are logical fallacies, etc. So this video is meant for those people that I'll obviously be posting this video anywhere that I come across this now. And it's also just for you guys, my subscribers, and anyone else finding it through keyword searches, to understand how you can better improve your debating skills online and understand where I might be coming from if you've run into me in some way in comments and you thought I was being rude or something, because I do get that a lot, is people think that because I shut people down for not sticking to these very rigorous standards, that somehow I'm making personal attacks when it's just a conclusion based on someone not being able to stick to things. So I never, at least at this point, you might be able to find it somewhere in the past on my channel, on some old video, but at this point in time I'm very confident in my own ability to never make personal attacks, never use logical fallacies in the beginning of a discussion. As soon as things start to drop in terms of the standard of the discussion, then it's all knives barred. You fling mud at me, I'm going to fling it back. I do not live by the golden rule at all times. I'm a huge fan of the golden rule, which is do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. But right behind that, I have the silver rule, which I also hold to a very high standard, which is do unto others as they do unto you. So the whole idea of turning the other cheek, in my opinion, is very weak and not coming from a place of primal instinct. If someone attacks you, you're going to attack them back. And I'm like that online. That's just my personal philosophy. I'm not saying it has to be that way. But as soon as you make something personal, if I even have the time or patience, I'll make it personal as well. So I'm very good at sticking to something and keeping it impersonal, as it should be when we're talking about anything that's academic, logic-based, scientific-based, and wanting to stick to facts. But I won't cross that line unless you do, so definitely don't cross that line unless you're just wanting to troll someone and be trolled back. So that's probably one of the most prevalent things I see, is any kind of personal attack that is forming the basis of a stance. Now, I'm not just going to reference this in terms of talking about me talking to people on my channel. I mean, if you're doing it to anyone, because, let's raise up the level of standard of discussion on the internet. It's in dire need of that. I'm not expecting miracles overnight, but I think the internet is a really key reflection as to the inner world that a lot of people hold. And that's something that I think is speeding up the evolution of internal thought for people, is we're getting all this junk and bad reasoning out on the internet. And that's why you see something like YouTube and why it looks like such a disaster area for trolling and stuff. This is just the way people think. It's just they don't voice it out in the world that often. So by getting this out there, we're starting to, change the way people think. Because what I'm like online is how I am internally. I've never been someone that outright insults people or judges them up front. My insults, judging, and defenses come up when someone starts to bring that and face it to me. And I have no time to deal with that, and if I'm attacked, I'm going to defend myself. It just makes sense. Of course, online you don't have to engage, and that's the other factor there. So a very fallacious argument would be dismissing someone's stance on the basis that they don't have credentials, or this person that counters their view has a PhD and they don't. That's very common. It's the focusing on the messenger as opposed to the message. If facts that were based on solid evidence came from a 7-year-old and they were challenging someone who was a 40-year-old PhD professor, it matters about the facts, not the person delivering them. And that's a major thing that I see quite prevalently, is people trying to go that route. That is not logical. You want to get to the bottom of something, you focus on the facts and not the messenger. So this is a form of personal attack, because you're making it personal and you're not making it about the substance. Always focus on the substance. Yes, if you personally want to make a judgment call on the quality of someone's information, by all means do it based on their looks, but you cannot use that in any kind of discussion. It's illogical. So I might look at someone and think, wow, they don't look healthy, but that's very subjective. That's my opinion. I don't want to go that route and end up looking like that, so I'm going to not listen to them. But I might still acknowledge the fact that they're presenting really good quality science to back up their stance. But I see that a lot. Is another thing is that subjective quality of saying, well, you don't look healthy, or you look pale. That's a common one for me, being a Canadian up here and looking to preserve the quality of my skin. I don't actually go out in the sun that often. I consume vitamin D. My vitamin D levels are spectacular. That's a difference of opinion on that factor. I'm just throwing that in there. Again, this comes down to something that's subjective, not objective. So raise up your standards and drop personal attacks from your stance if you want to engage with me and actually have a fighting chance at coming out on top. One of the major things I continually see on my channel and see in people who challenge me is a lack of evidence. On a lot of videos, when I want them to be coming from this stance, unless it's a recipe video, of course I'm not going to reference a recipe video, but if I'm making a point that should be backed up with science, I will. I'll list it below the video. And time again I see people criticizing a video and they haven't either watched the whole thing, they haven't bothered to look at the evidence. It's unbelievable how often it is that someone will say something that was already addressed in the video. On the very rare occasion that someone actually rises to the challenge and makes a video response, it's rare that they actually do the proper logical process of taking each point that they disagree with, presenting counter evidence if it's even necessary. Sometimes, it'll be a philosophical counterpoint that can, in some cases, be valid, but if it's a point that's backed with something, you usually have to back it up with something to respond to it. And then, once you've broken down their stance, you have to rebuild a new stance. This is very basic and should be intuitive to understand. I've only learned it through trial and error of debating and discussing things online over time. So then when you create a new stance to counter that, you have to back it up as well if it's something that needs to be backed up. So, there are definitely academic topics that would be more philosophical. So like someone might say, I think we're vegetarian because all our teeth are flat and we don't have big sharp teeth. So my response to that, I don't need to back that up with a study because it's an idea. So my response would be something like, well, actually our teeth do show signs of some degree of sharpness, more so than herbivores, and we do have teeth for tearing, etc. And if I wanted to, I could take it a step further and actually use references to show, evolution has shown that, it's true that our ancestors, if we go back to before we were humans, when we were vegetarian, 3 million plus years ago, the teeth were flatter, and then as we got more meat in our diet, the teeth became sharper at the edges, especially on the molars, and that allowed us to chew through meat. And other parts of the physiology that changed as well is beside the point. But you see what I'm doing is I'm just giving you an example, whether you agree with this example or not, of something that is a point and then a counterpoint, and you can bring in the evidence if you want. If the person used evidence to support their idea of we're vegetarians because of the shape of our teeth, to make my point, I have to first break down that point to then bring up my point. So that's something that I've yet to see someone actually do in a video response when we're talking about actual topics that are discussed on my channel. This applies to all forms of scientific-based reasoning too. Like you could take any topic. Obviously my channel mostly focuses on health, almost exclusively. But an interesting thing with the video I posted recently, the gun control debate thing, so few people actually took the time to watch that video all the way through, as well as the response video that's clearly under it from my vlogging channel that gave my opinion on what it is I actually believe about gun control, because that's such a wide spectrum of things that are included in that. And so there's all these responses that do not hold any weight because they're already addressed in the video, and then someone made a video response but it was just a clip from a news site. Like, I'm not going to post a video response that I actually agree with, where the person didn't take the time to break down my points and offer their counterpoints. This is really how it has to work, and I just don't stand for anything less than that. So there are people who say, I'm this horrible person who insults them online. Well, again, going back to what I was talking about earlier, the idea of the silver rule, that does come out, and I don't have to do that. I could just simply block people, but sometimes I'll throw in a word in edgewise in response to a personal message to them or whatever, or if it's on someone else's channel and there's no way for me to block them, I'll throw some stuff out there, but I usually don't take it too far. But yeah, that will come out. That doesn't make me wrong. That doesn't make my stance wrong. That's me going there after someone's chosen to take it to that level. So if you fling mud, prepare for me to jump down in that ditch with you, and not just fling it back at you, but take a whole fistful and shove it down your throat up to my elbow as I curb stomp your stance. Because you haven't had the gonads to rise to the occasion, adhere to this strict logic and high standards for discussing things, and that's when you hear me say step up or step out. People think that I'm this person that's wanting to fight people, but you let the facts fight. That's what I mean by step up. You've got to step up and present the facts, present things objectively without getting personally involved, without trying to make personal attacks. You present them and the facts do the fighting, and then they fall away. And whatever stance has the most weight to it comes out on top. So when you have emotional investment in a stance, in your stance, that's when you're going to be personally hurt, and that's when you're going to actually lash back, when that lashing back has never actually taken place from the other side. So that's what I mean by taking yourself out of your stance and just presenting it as cold, hard facts. There's no emotionality involved. So let me know what you think about this video in the comments below. Like, favorite, and share this video if you feel so inclined. Definitely subscribe. And with that, I'll talk to you next time. Take care and embrace life without limits.